Okay, I've read it.
Okay, I guess I'll rephrase my question. Is it true or accurate to say that in this email that was sent to you from Ms. Novak, that she raised some concerns regarding her supervisor, Doug Percy?
Objection leading.
Well, I think it's in there. I mean, do you want us to not, you want to make it longer? So I'm not sure, is there a
I
controversy
got it,
with that
Judge. Fine,
question?
fine.
Okay.
No problem. Got it.
Go ahead.
Yes, you want me to answer, Judge?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yes, she does mention that she contacted Doug Percy 1 week prior to the escape to discuss Holly Zimdahl and whether or not she should put her out, whether Warden Novak should put Holly Zimdahl out on administrative leave. According to the email, Deputy Administrator Percy advised her that that was her decision. She runs that institution. She should run it.
Judge, could you scroll up just a little bit? I want to, right there, please, Judge. So, Secretary, it looks like, according to this email string, it looks like you forwarded this email to somebody. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Who did you forward it to?
My deputy secretary, Amy Pechacek,
And why did you forward it to her?
because she was in charge as the deputy secretary. Part of her responsibility is the day-to-day oversight of the operational aspects of the agency. Makta Besahaya and DAI reported to her, as well as the internal affairs unit. Me, knowing that I would eventually at some point might be called to make a decision in this case, wanted to put myself at arm's length away from having to deal with Warden Novak's email.
And who is Chrissy Preston or Christine Preston?
Chrissy Preston is the director of the internal affairs unit.
And did you personally respond to Ms. Novak's email?
I did not.
And why not?
It would be improper for me to do so because of an ongoing investigation. As she noted, she felt a little uncomfortable because she was, inferring that she didn't want to impede an investigation. And by the whole tone of her email, you could tell that she kind of knew that, this was thin ice that she was on as far as discussing an investigation that was ongoing with me in my position.
Okay, thank you. And Judge, I just want to confirm this has been admitted into evidence at this point, correct?
Correct. Both parties wanted it in,
Okay.
but I don't understand. There's no direction from you, Mr. Carr, Secretary Carr, to Ms. Pechacek,
No.
or to Christine. So I don't know what. Did they understand that if you sent it to them, something would happen?
Yes, that, I think it's clear by the contents of the email that it should be referred directly to internal affairs to include, as I said earlier, any of the facts that are established, they need to go wherever they need to go. If she's making allegations that Mr. Percy and Deputy Administrator Percy and Administrator Fesahaya were remiss in some way, those things need to be looked at by internal affairs, not, and that's the whole purpose of ensuring that internal affairs gets the email and includes it for consideration in their investigation.
And did that happen, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, it did.
And why do you believe that?
I believe that because I am, I'm, I recall during updates about the progress of the investigation, not being told that there was anything substantial that could be documented or proven regarding Administrator Besahaya or Deputy Administrator Percy.
And who, to your knowledge, made that statement or?
I'm sure it would have come from Chrissy Preston, who provides me with the updates on the investigations as they're proceeding. As I said earlier, I meet with her every 2 weeks to get updates on how things are going.
And again, can you tell me Ms. Preston's position title?
She is the Director of the Internal Affairs Unit.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Mullenbach.
And Judge, could you just scroll up ever so slightly, please? Right,
Not sure how far.
just a little bit farther down, please. Right there. I'm sorry. Right there is fine. So, Secretary, you had mentioned that you forwarded this email or the email that you received from Ms. Novak to your Deputy Secretary, Amy Pechacek. And then it looks like, according to this string, that was forwarded to Christine Preston, who you just testified was the head of internal affairs, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Judge, could you just scroll up a little bit more for me again, please? A little bit down. I'm
Title
sorry. I'm
page.
just looking at the next string. Right there, please, Judge. Secretary, are you aware of who Joseph Sonnenberg is?
He's an investigator in the Internal Affairs Office.
Okay. Judge, I have no more questions of this of Secretary Carr.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Cross, do you have questions on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the best I can, but they just opened some,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, please.
oh, let me see if I should change my settings.
I can hear you now. It's when you turn your head away that I can't hear you.
Oh, well, thanks for that. Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna be here for a little bit, I suppose now.
Well,
Based,
before you start then, does anybody need to have a break?
let's do it. All right. So,
Mullenbach, you're fine? You didn't respond.
Yes, I'm fine, Judge.
Okay, all right, then go ahead, please.
great. So, this document here, number 36, you read this email in its entirety from Sue Novak to yourself on May 3rd of 2020, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And she was not separated from the department yet at that time, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, not to confuse the record, it used to be Exhibit 36, it's now Respondents Exhibit 27. So if you could make that change for yourself so we make sure we stay on the right numbering system. It's Respondents Exhibit 27.
Okay.
Go
Got it.
ahead.
All right. So now you read this in its entirety. And now we had several questions back and forth with you about whether or not you had any knowledge of the kitchen worker prior to the separation of Warden Novak, right?
I don't specifically recall the questions being phrased that way, but let's go with it.
Okay, but you told us that you didn't recall having any information about Doug Percy prior to Sue Novak's separation, correct?
I object. It's a mischaracterization of the testimony.
Well,
In any case, this exhibit, my understanding is that Ms. Novak left employment in April, correct? Is that correct? The end of
No.
April? When did she leave? Oh, she left in June. Okay, there was a mistake earlier.
well, but
Initially,
also
there was some statement it was in April and then they changed it to being June. Okay, so this May would have been, she would still be working for the respondent. Go ahead then.
and it says, I am well aware that there's an ongoing investigation regarding CCI in this case.
Okay, I understand. Go ahead.
Secretary Carr? So that indicates to you that this is before her separation, right?
Object to the form of the
Are you
question. It was a
asking me?
resignation, not separation.
So the question is that she retired. So
So I'm going to use the word separation. That's the word that I use. That's the, if he doesn't like my vocabulary, that's all on him, but I'm not going to change my words for him. So if there's a problem with
it's
separation,
just so
let me
long as
know.
you understand, you're not changing the facts of the case by saying she was separated. She separated herself by retiring.
Separation is a neutral term. It applies to either party, and it doesn't imply that they terminated or no.
Correct. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. Thank
Go
you
ahead.
for that. Just all right. So now again, you told us here under oath that you were not aware of the facts regarding this investigation, and that specifically, I guess, let me leave that at that. You told us earlier that you were not aware of whether or not Sue Novak had told you about Doug Percy prior to her separation, correct?
I said,
Objection mischaracterizes the testimony.
right.
I don't really know, but let's just say that happened, whatever. So let's ask the actual question. Can you ask the actual question? Because we don't have a way to read that back. And I can't remember, there was so many questions. So just
Okay,
ask the
but
question.
this information in this letter contradicts statements you made earlier today under oath, doesn't it?
Objection,
No, it
badgering the
doesn't.
witness.
No, it doesn't. Not at
Okay,
all.
why not?
Go ahead.
Because I believe I said I didn't recall whether I received any information about Doug Percy prior to Warden Novak retiring. In fact, um, until I saw this email, I couldn't remember who the kitchen worker's name was, but it was Holly Zimdahl. And I didn't know anything about the Holly Zimdahl case until the escape took place. So, you know, the fact that and what she alludes to in this email,
Who? Holly Zimdahl or Miss
no,
Novak?
Ms. Novak, what she alludes to in this email regarding Deputy Administrator Percy and Administrator Fesahaya, um, I don't think rises to the level of any sort of rule violation. I mean,
Okay,
so it wouldn't
great.
have,
Let's go through that
would
then.
not have
So,
even raised a concern for me.
okay, so you didn't, and I get that. And I guess the first thing I want to be clear on is that you told us before that you have a hands-off approach with internal affairs, right?
Right.
Right, okay, but you sent this concern to internal affairs, didn't you?
Sure, of course. That's the
Okay.
proper place for it to go.
So that's not a true, what you said before wasn't accurate, was it?
Objection, vague
About
form of the
what?
question.
Sustained.
Okay. So now let's go, and then you say, you now tell us that you are aware of the rule violation, you are aware of all the rules for the department, and that I looked at this document here, and that you were not able to identify a rule violation by Doug Percy, right?
I didn't
Objection,
say
that's
that.
not the testimony. Mischaracterization.
I didn't say that.
How are you able to show us are you able to show us from this document how you believe or form the opinion that there was no policy violation by Doug Percy here?
Well, Eric, you want me to answer that question?
He's not objecting, so answer the question.
All right. First of all, if she's asking for Doug's advice and whether I think it was the right call or not, his advice to her was, you make those decisions. It's your institution, run it. I don't necessarily disagree with his fundamental premise. Would I maybe have made a different decision? Maybe I have a more assertive management style. But that doesn't mean that what he did or said was wrong. And then, as you can certainly see in the email, your client or Warden Novak points out that having an escape at an institution, especially a maximum security institution, is the biggest event, a warden or DAI could ever experience. I agree with that statement. So some of the things that she says is absolutely right. The fact that he didn't reach out to her after the escape, there's no rule violation there. Okay. I mean, she just feels that she was not, that she might not have gotten the type of support that she felt that she was entitled to. She did receive calls from Administrator Fesahaya this day. I don't know whether those calls were only limited to questions about the PIO. I doubt it, because I know Administrator Fesahaya, who's a very caring and supportive individual, and often reaches out to people to try to provide them with support. I don't know what else to say about this email.
What does PIO mean?
Public Information Officer.
Okay. Why would MACTA FSIE want to know who the warden's PIO was?
Objection, speculation.
Don't know. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I agree with that. And unless there's some policy, is there a policy that would
Yes, that's
require?
what Novak thought. How he got
No.
what Novak thought. But okay.
Do you know if there's a policy that would have required Ms. Magda to ask who the PIO was?
Oh, are you asking me?
Yes, I am asking you.
What's the question, Your Honor?
The question is about this PIO, Public Information Officer. Would there be any kind of policy reason that Ms. Magda would have wanted to know who the PIO officer was from Ms. Novak?
I don't know. I mean,
Go ahead, and that's fine. You don't know.
What does a PIO do for a warden?
during a critical incident like this, there should always be, and this is just based on my law enforcement experience and how these types of events are managed, there should always be a point person at the site of the incident that's designated to deal with press inquiries, because the press is going to descend on the location, and the warden or the other supervisors or executive staff should not have to be distracted by dealing with them in addition to managing the incident itself.
Okay, so it's fair to say there that she's saying that MACTA was more concerned about press than the escape, right?
Objection,
No.
mischaracterizes the evidence, and
Wow. Come on.
And I'm not going to ask him to characterize what he thinks it says. No. Well, let's move on.
Okay, so then, but she did, I guess, how did you receive this comment that says, I did receive 2 calls from MACTA that day, both times she wanted to know who my PIO was? What did that mean to you at that time?
That Makta wanted to know who was handling press inquiries for the institution while everybody else was dealing with the operational issues that led up to the escape and the initial investigation.
Okay.
I
And
guess-
did she say whether or not she got any other support? Or did you understand at that time whether or not either the administrator or the director, that's Mr. Percy or Ms. Fesai, had offered any other support to the institution while the escape was ongoing?
objection, this has already been gone over. This is asked and answered several times at this point.
Well, now we've got
I
new
don't think
evidence.
that particular question was, so I'm going to allow. Go ahead.
Repeat the question, please.
Okay, how did you understand what she meant by that was the extent of my direction from my supervisors?
Well, the way that I read it at the time and the way that I read it today is that she was not satisfied with the direction that she got from her superiors, as she calls them. But she doesn't say that she asked for any direction.
Oh, okay. So let's look at that here. So she says that she called Doug Percy 1 week prior to the escape. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay. And how do you know that?
Well, I don't know if she did or not. I'm just telling you what she says here in the email. If that, I
Okay.
thought that's what you were asking me.
And so you understood at that time that she also said that she specifically called to discuss the kitchen worker and what evidence that the institution had on the kitchen worker at that time, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And again, the kitchen worker was charged with the crime for assisting in the escape, right?
Yes.
Okay. And people were investigated, including Warden Novak. I should say department employees were investigated, including Warden Novak, because of the failure to prevent the kitchen worker from assisting in the escape, correct?
That's a mischaracterization of the evidence, Judge.
Dude, come on.
I don't recall that. I just recall being told there were leads that made it important to investigate management with respect to the fence and with respect to this kitchen employee. So as to what, I don't know why. So you can ask him.
I thought I did, and then we got
I do
interrupted.
not recall that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Cross. What's the question?
Well, my question to you, I thought, was didn't you know that there are Department of Correction employees who, including Warden Novak, who were investigated for failing to prevent the kitchen worker from assisting in the escape, correct?
Again, I think that's a mischaracterization of the testimony and the evidence.
It's a question.
And you're
Can you
mischaracterizing.
tell us, Mr. Carr, or Secretary Carr, what's your knowledge of the issue regarding the investigation of employees and the kitchen staff person? Just let us know again, please.
Sure. My recollection is that after the escape, I was told about the role that this kitchen worker, Miss Zimdahl, may have played in assisting in the escape, and learned that there had already been an ongoing investigation into her conduct prior to the actual day of the escape. Obviously, those are important factors in the overall incident that is under investigation regarding the escape. And it would be natural that wherever the facts led into who did what, when, or how is relevant. I mean, and I'm sure that Internal Affairs took all of that into account.
Okay, so are you telling us that at this point was when you understood they were going to go beyond just, I think you called them frontline people, to supervisory people to see if there was any issues regarding their conduct that should be disciplined?
Absolutely. I mean, if I was, and I think I may have been told that, oh yeah, by the way, we think that this person assisted in the escape and that she was already under investigation for days prior to the escape. But, you know, to the extent of who knew what, when, who made what decisions, all of that would have to be determined in the course of the investigation.
Right. But you told us that you determined that at this time that there was no policy violation by Doug Percy, correct?
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, based on what I know and what I've seen so far, at that point, there would be I don't think there's any um, rule violation. Because if what you're focusing on is him telling her, you make those decisions, it's your institution, run it. I don't even know if Mr. Percy said that.
Okay, so let's just go back then and compare, because you told us, as I recall, that Warden Novak was liable to be disciplined for the wall because she was aware of it but didn't tell anybody, right?
Wait, for what?
Would that be
You,
true? Was it that accurate to your understanding?
Wait, to the wall? What wall?
So
the
the
reverse
fence issue,
fence that was
I
been,
believe the fence.
ineffective since at least 1989, that fence.
Oh, the fence.
Yeah, the
Objection.
fence.
Assumes the facts and evidence as far as the 1989 question is, or issue is concerned.
Sustained that part of the question as to the extent, I actually don't remember anymore. Could you ask again?
Sure. And here's the point here, Judge, and here's the point. You told us before under oath that Warden Novak was liable to discipline for the fence because she was aware of its condition but didn't report it to you, correct?
I would object to the form of the question as far as the liable for discipline is concerned. I don't think that was the testimony.
No, I did not say that.
Move on, please. Next question.
Okay. So, and I want to be clear because, and what gender is Doug Percy, if you know?
He's a male.
He's a male. Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, but the female warden tells her male supervisor about the issue with the kitchen worker prior to the escape. And the female warden, the male supervisor tells the female warden to, quote, deal with it. It's your institution, run it. And is that right?
Objection, again, it assumes facts, not in evidence. That's not what he testified to. He testified that that's what this email says that was drafted by Ms. Novak.
Fine. So you knew that. Fine. I'll be clearer on that. So it's fair to say that as of May 3rd of 2020, you knew that, or say Warden Novak brought to your attention that she had alerted Doug Percy 1 week prior to the escape about the kitchen worker, right?
If her email is accurate.
Okay. And now you have never seen, although you forward this to the internal affairs, have you ever seen an investigation into whether or not Doug Percy should be liable for discipline for his part or his knowledge of the kitchen worker prior to the escape?
I'm not clear on your question, sir. Could you
Okay.
rephrase that in a way?
Right. So as a secretary, have you seen the results of any investigation into Doug Percy based on his knowledge of the kitchen worker issue 1 week prior to the escape?
No,
Okay. Do you believe that such an investigation took place?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Now, I understood that you told us earlier that someone told you that neither Doug Percy nor Magda was aware of anything prior to the escape. Did I understand that correctly?
No, you didn't. I don't recall saying that.
Okay. Well, did anybody I guess then we want to be clear. You made the decision that Doug Percy hadn't done anything wrong based on this letter, right?
No, I did not. It was
You-
referred to internal affairs, and they, you know, they evaluate and investigate and determine the facts. You know,
Okay.
just because, look, you know, just because, no, I'm gonna leave it there. I just going to answer your questions. I'm not going.
Great.